Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to first of the webinars that we organize together with our alliance partner Google Cloud on the topics around AI, data and visualization. The first webinar that we have today is focused on the topic of overcoming the challenges when adopting AI. Before we get into it, let me briefly introduce myself and the agenda of what we are going to do today. My name is Tervel Šopov. I'm based in Prague, Czech Republic. I have been with Deloitte for 7 years already, and I have been working in the areas of AI and data for more than 10 years. Currently, my role and responsibility in Deloitte is that I lead the AI and data strategy offering in Deloitte CE, and I also lead an offering that we call AI Insights, which is focused on data science, machine learning, and AI topics. But the topic that is closest to my heart and that I spent most of my time discussing and helping clients across the Central Europe is related specifically to the AI and data strategy, how the companies should be successful when adopting new technologies and how they can utilize the whole potential. In the webinar today, I will share with you a few thoughts around these topics, and I will also talk about the context of what is happening today, because this year we have seen quite an exciting journey when it comes to AI, quite a lot of new solutions available on the market, and that of course triggered a lot of activity and attention on the side of the business. Throughout the webinar, we will have a few interactive moments where I will ask you to contribute with answers to some of the questions that we outlined, and we will have a chance to discuss them briefly. I also encourage you, feel free to use the chat feature to submit any questions that you might have, and after we finish, we will happily go through the questions with you. In terms of the timing, I believe that we will be able to conclude also including a Q&A in about 45 minutes to give you enough time for a bio break and a coffee before your next meeting this afternoon. So since the topic is called overcoming the challenges when it comes to AI and data adoption, I suggest to start with the first question. And I also suggest we test the interactive options that this platform has for us. And I would kindly ask you to share with us what are the main barriers that you see in your organization that you are facing when adopting AI or data or analytics solutions. We have outlined the most typical barriers that we meet. However, if you are not happy with neither of the options that you have in the poll, feel free to use the chat feature and share some specific barriers that you see that are not listed in the questions. So we will give it a few moments for everyone to be able to submit their answers, and then we will proceed with the discussion. Typically, the barriers that the companies face are quite diverse. Some might be connected with the infrastructure and with the data availability and quality. Some barriers might be connected more with the culture in the organization or even with the organizational structure. These are the things that might often slow down the adoption of the technologies, and companies need to handle them in a systematic way in order to become successful. So let's take a look if we have some answers. So we see that majority of the companies, actually the highest ranking option is lack of the necessary skills. We have approximately 50% of the respondents. And the second one that scored 35% is we do not have clear expectations of what analytics can do. On the third, we have with 31% infrastructure and data are blocking us. So we see that the distribution across the options is quite diverse, and it only proves that this is not a single discipline but it spans across the different functions, and the whole organization needs to look at it holistically. Let me continue. I will start by remembering Mr. Gordon Moore, who has passed away this year. Mr. Moore was the co-founder of Intel Corporation, and back in the 60s, Mr. Moore has predicted that the growth of technologies and the development of capacity of technologies and the computational power is going to be exponential. And since the 60s, this premise has been valid, and it's still valid up until today. And if we look at the pace at which new technologies are coming to market, such as solutions around generative AI, it only proves the point. This is an illustration of the development in the area of technology from the very first moment where the first design of something that we could call a computer was created, and that was 175 years ago. And you can see on the timeline here that the split of the different milestones is actually accelerating quite rapidly over time. And this is the exponential growth, and that's something that is sometimes a bit hard for our brains to tackle, because our brains cannot really easily imagine an exponential. But this is what is happening in the area of technology. And if we move for a moment into a different area and we look in the field of archaeology, we will see that evolution is actually not happening gradually, but it's rather happening in leaps of rapid change. And I believe that the same is valid for technology. And I also believe that we are currently witnessing one of these leaps. And the reason for that is that for a very long time, the main bottleneck in the world of technology was how we communicate with computers. If you think about it, the limitless human brain that we all have and the powerful machines that we have created, they communicate together via old school channels such as mouse, keyboard, recently perhaps voice and gestures, but these are still very narrow channels to connect these two powerful entities. By the way, this is the reason why people such as Elon Musk are obsessed with the idea of Neuralink. That's a solution that connects the human brain and the machine seamlessly via a microchip that's implemented on the back of your head, because he is aware that this bottleneck is something that is limiting us in terms of how we communicate with the machines. I don't think we are quite there yet when it comes to connecting our brain directly with the computers and with the internet, although we might get there sooner than we expect. But I do believe that the recent developments in the area of generative AI will actually transform how we communicate with computers and will widen this channel that is a bottleneck. And this is something that we need to pay attention to, and it's something that triggers this change that is happening on the world. Now, while this is all very, very exciting, and I think all of you feel that AI is now everywhere, and it's the major topic, we need to ask ourselves, what does this actually mean for the business? What does this mean for the organizations that we are in? And if we look at some statistics, and by the way, these are all data that are based on both quantitative as well as qualitative research that we are doing, we will see that 1/3 of companies admit poor effectiveness of their current operating models when it comes to providing analytical insights. We will see that 59% of companies don't use AI within their business at all, be it because it's not a priority for us, as in this case, or because they would like to, but they don't have the right tools and skills available, or simply because they lack the senior sponsorship and the funding. we will see that 88% of the companies struggle with integration and compatibility of the machine learning technologies. And in the past year, we have seen a 29% increase of respondents that self-identify as underachievers when it comes to AI and data. That means that relatively to what is available on the market, they consider themselves as underachieving, which only proves that the technology is moving faster than we and the organizations are able to adopt it. And that's obviously a problem. Let's maybe jump in with another of our poll questions, and let's have a quick survey. If you as an organization are currently using AI technologies in your business. And I know that this question is very broad, but think about the typical use cases that could be both internal. So you could be using AI within your financial processes, within your operations for automation or streamlining how you operate internally, as well as for your customer-facing applications or interactions with the market. So give it a thought, and please let us know how your organization is standing when it comes to the AI technologies use. I will give everyone a moment to submit their answers, because there might be slight differences in when the poll reaches you as different listeners. And let's take a look at the results. So the number one answer is we are just starting with AI, submitted by 33% of you. And then we have two answers, both with 27%. Yes, we are actively using AI, and no, but we are open to it. So we could say that around 60% of companies are, to a certain extent, using AI, and the 40 are not there and potentially are considering it. I think that this is very much in line with what we have seen in the previous statistics, and it only proves that the companies need to focus now to accelerate the adoption. Let me share another point of view. Our colleagues in the US have performed an analysis or a study when they looked at around 3 million pages of data about Fortune 500 companies. They analyzed this data, obviously utilizing modern technologies such as natural language processing, and they were looking at different type of activities these companies take when it comes to digital technologies, and they were correlating these activities with the company's key performance indicators, or to be specific, with their market capitalization. And they were simply looking between the connection of the action that the company takes and the market capitalization that the company achieves. And the findings were twofold. The first one, it's not really surprising. It was proven that the technologies, if the actions taken are right, can represent a huge potential uplift in the additional market capitalization for the firms. But the finding number two was a bit worrying, because it was proven that if the actions taken are not right or are not well combined, the digital technologies may actually represent a threat that is even higher than the opportunity, and that can result in erosion of the market capitalization of the companies. So how can companies cope with this opportunity versus risk, and how you can navigate through this complex environment? As I mentioned at the beginning, I have been in the field of AI and data for more than 10 years. And over the time, I have observed a pattern. pattern of companies that are successful when it comes to adopting new technologies, and that differentiates them from those who struggle and who are slower with the adoption. And I'm going to share with you 3 key characteristics of a company that is successful with adoption. The first one is having AI and data strategy in place. And I think, although this is very obvious, let's maybe dig a bit into that and discuss briefly what does it actually mean. Enterprises that actually have an AI strategy are 1.7 times more likely to achieve their goals. So it is even quantified that this is a clear driver of success. But what's nice is that companies actually know that. So currently, if we look at enterprises, 45% of them are developing or redeveloping their data, analytics, and or AI strategy. But what does it actually mean when I say AI and data strategy? Let's share a few examples. Example number 1, what does it actually mean for your business to use AI and data? And this goes back to the first poll that we set, where the number 2 answer was unclear expectations of what AI and data can do. This is very important for organizations to decide, because there is a big difference if you decide that you will utilize AI and data for achieving operational excellence internally in your organization and for automating all your processes, versus if you decide that you will use the technologies to transform your business model and introduce new data-driven products to the market. These 2 goals require a completely different approach, and this is why it's important to decide it at the beginning. Another example of a strategic consideration is, where do we as a company want to build internal competence, which we will treat as a competitive advantage, versus where do we buy commoditized solutions from the market. And this is especially important now when the technologies are moving forward so quickly, because you can very easily fall into the trap of developing something internally that you will want to have as a market leader ahead of the others. But before you finish your efforts, the same solution will actually be introduced as a commoditized product on the market, and your investment will be lost. So this is another example of a strategic consideration. We can maybe dig a bit deeper into these options or into this consideration, because it's not only what we do internally versus what we buy from the outside. There is also the compromise option, that you hire someone to develop on your behalf. And these represent quite different advantages and disadvantages. And my recommendation is not to make this decision making on a single project level, but to really make it strategically decided that topic A and B is something that I want to have in-house, because this is a key market differentiator for me. And then topics C and D, I will be somehow cleverly splitting between these 2 options, because it's something where I don't want to invest. I want to use what is available on the market. And the third example of what we can consider like a strategic discussion is, how do we ensure that this topic is well represented on a board level? Because quite often, and especially with the large enterprises, this is not the case. And the first people that have true ownership of the topic are somewhere on B-3, sometimes even B-4 level in a large organizations, and that prevents the company from actually paying enough attention to the topics. Then when we look at the typical challenges, and we have discussed this at the beginning, there are many different types of challenges, and the strategic discussion within your organization should enable you to tackle all these different types of challenges and address it. And these are spanning from the data and infrastructure to things that are related very much to people, so leadership, skills, capacity, but also to an overall governance and operational model. Let's maybe jump in with another poll question, and let me ask you whether you as an organization have AI and data strategy in place. And I will ask you to contribute with your answers. When it comes to AI and data strategy, this can be something that is thorough and comprehensive, a very official strategy that's put in place. But it can also be something very simple and pragmatic that you as a company created, where you state what does it mean, what you want to do, and what are some key principles on how you want to achieve it. So I don't want to limit it in terms of what is the actual extent of the strategy, but give it a thought whether there is something of this nature that you have in the organization that is recognized by the leadership as well as the business and the AI and data functions. So I'll give you a moment now to answer and to submit your point of view. Of course, no strategy is static, so this is something that it's constantly evolving. But the question is, do you have something in place that you can actually work with over time? So let's take a look at the answers submitted. 43% of the respondents do not have an AI and data strategy in place. 10% are planning to develop one, but still do not have one. So if we sum it up, 53% are lacking AI and data strategy. What is nice is that 37% of respondents do have it, although in an early stage, and 10% have it and are happy with it. So it's very close to 50-50. I think this is a good result, and it shows that it's something that is now quite evolving. And I can tell you that with the recent developments around generative AI, the internal demand in the organizations is increasing, and leadership is often under pressure to actually put such strategy in place for the company to know where they should move and how they should utilize it. I'll continue with one more poll question, and this is the last one actually, which is focused on one of the specific aspects. And I specifically ask about that because it's something that I treat as one of the key prerequisites. It's something that is, or that should be quite easy to do and achieve, but it's still quite often overseen and it's not happening. And the question is that whether you would say that the AI and data topic is well represented on the board level of your organization. This is something that does not require an extensive transformation project, and it unlocks quite a big energy and focus on the area. So this is why I'm very curious to see specifically around this question how you would rate your organizations when it comes to the representation of the topic in the board level. So let me again give you a few moments to submit your answers, and then let's take a look at how you stand. As we wait for everyone to submit their answers, I also encourage you, if you have some thoughts about the topics that we are discussing, feel free to submit your questions or comments or point of views via the chat. At the end of the presentation, we will get to it, and I will be happy to address it and have some discussion. So let's take a look on the answers. So answer number one, 32% no, the topic is not well represented, we can add another 23% to it, not currently, but we are working on it. So that gives us 55% in total of companies that have not a good representation of the topic in a board. And then we have 29% of those that say that it is there, but it could be better, and 16% that have an owner on a board level. As you can see, this is quite similar as with the previous question, the distribution of the answers. I take it as something that's quite easily to be actionable internally. So perhaps if there are some board members among you here, or if you can pressure your organization, this might be one of the first steps that you want to take to really promote this topic. Let me get back to the characteristics of companies that are successful when it comes to adoption of AI and data technologies. We just discussed that the first characteristic is having AI and data strategy in place. Let's move to the second characteristic. It's something that I call usability. And I will use the example of ChatGPT. Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO, himself admitted that it was not the underlying model that mattered, that made ChatGPT so successful, but it was the usability of it. And let's break it down and look into it. If we think about how ChatGPT is actually built, or any similar solution for that matter, at the core of it, we have these so-called large language models. These are very robust, trained on vast amounts of data, and they are consuming huge amounts of computational resources. But on its own, these models are not very usable. However, by packaging it in a solution that leverages reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is the feedback loop that actually enables the solution to learn on how the users actually want to have their answers provided. And by packaging it into a user-friendly chatbot interface, the solution has become truly and amazingly usable. And this is a very nice example that, you know, the place which takes the most effort, which is this one, does not necessarily give you the ultimate usability. And we can use an example from a corporate environment. Many companies are trying to predict churn of their customers. So imagine that you develop the most precise model that predicts which of your customers are about to leave your company for the competition. But even if this model performs at its best, if you fail to translate the outcome of the model into a usable action for the people at the front desk of your business that can actually act on it and prevent the customer from leaving, you will never be able to capitalize on the investment that you made in the first place. And we can even share a different example, which is even simpler, and that's business intelligence or dashboarding. Think about how many management reports or dashboards has your organization produced that are actually not adopted because the usability is low and the business users are struggling with it. So there is a very thin line between something that gives you the function that you need and that has the correct science in it versus something that also gives you the usability. And the last characteristic of companies that are successful when it comes to adoption of AI and data technologies is culture, or maybe let's be a little bit more specific and call it the ability to change. And I will again go back to the study that we have performed in the US, where we were looking at the Fortune 500 companies, and we were looking at the different types of actions that they make and correlating it with the market capitalization. The types of actions that we analyzed were of three types. So we distinguished between companies that actually have some strategy in place, similarly as we have discussed the AI and data strategy. We have distinguished actions that are about the actual investments in the technology. And then we have looked at the ability to change. And while we would expect that the best combination with the most positive impact is the full trifecta, I think that's a common sense. What was surprising, at least to me, is that the most negative combination, where the biggest erosion of value happens, is when you have the strategy, you also have the investments, but you are lacking the ability to change. And I think this is a very strong statement that proves that it's not often only about throwing the money at the area of your interest, but it also requires some efforts related to the culture and to how people are thinking and behaving within the organization. It's often told that culture eats the strategy for breakfast, and I think this is valid for this case. Yeah, so you may very nicely have the strategy in place, but the culture is actually what makes it done. So focus also on that and encourage it proactively within your organization. And one of the examples of how this can potentially be done, specifically in the area of AI and data, is to be bridging the gaps between the business side of things and the technical side of things. We have a nice term for that. We call the people who are able to bridge the gaps as purple people. And this is something that encourages this culture change, and it helps the organization to become less siloed and divided on the business side and the technical side. And you can see it nowadays if you look at the adoption of the new AI-powered solutions, that it's not no longer a domain of the experts, but it's actually becoming used by everyone. So to summarize, the three characteristics of a company that is successful is a company that has AI and data strategy in place. It's a company that focuses on usability internally as well as externally with all the solutions that they develop and introduce. And it's a company that has the ability to change. And before we conclude, let me maybe share an example or call to action of how you can actually act upon it. We have something that we call Insight-Driven Organization Lab, which is an interactive format of a full day or half-day discussions that we have with the companies that want to move forward. This is intended for people from the board level to people on managerial levels that are either on the consumer side internally when it comes to the technologies, or are the ones who are the internal vendors of these type of topics. And it focuses on discussing the current situation, showing what is possible and what the different peers in your given industry are actually doing, and it helps to formulate the strategy quite nicely. The typical challenges that we hear on these type of discussions is that the organization is overloaded with ad hoc tasks, and it's not really able to focus on the cases with the return or on investments. We quite often discuss topics such as poor quality of data and the impacted results. Nowadays, the technological landscape more and more complex, but we also discuss the dilemmas that I have outlined a little bit. Another example here is centralization versus specialization. So should I have one central team that will be serving these capabilities, or should I have specialized team that will sit in different business functions? These are again topics that are relevant for these strategic discussions. So as a kickoff, I would encourage this discussion without us or with us, that's up to you, but definitely some type of conversation on these topics should happen, involving the board level in your organization. Otherwise, it's quite complicated to act on it. So I hope that this was quite practical. I tend to rather, go through it quickly and leave some room for discussion. So perhaps at this point, I would encourage if there are some questions in the chat. If not, feel free to reach out on email or via LinkedIn. And I hope that these points are something that you can maybe take forward internally, discuss, and maybe formulate some brief action plan around it. So let me take a look in the chat. So we don't have any questions at this point. That can mean two things. Let's see which one is it. So I'll give it a few more moments. So we see that the attendees are staying in, waiting for someone to submit the first questions. You are not leaving, but you are hesitant. So I expect that there is some appetite to have some discussion. We have room for it. So think about something specific that perhaps you are currently dealing with. I can imagine that it can be valuable also for the others. And very often we find out that companies are dealing more or less with the same issues. So such a platform where you can share it might be a good place. So we have a first question. Several times generative AI was mentioned. Can you give an example of specific business use case for it? So I think this is a very broad question and the answer can be very broad. I can give a nice example in an area where I think that this will come the most, and this is the industry of publishers. So I know that the publishers are looking into this topic quite heavily because a big part of their work can actually be automated and streamlined with that. I'm not saying that it will replace the work of journalists, but it's something that can make their work much easier. Especially in the areas where it's about looking at an event, being a sport event or something that has happened the day before, and just providing a simple summary. So this is something that is being implemented also here in the region and the Czech Republic throughout the businesses. Do you see any connection between lean transformation and digital transformation? Not necessarily, but can be. I would not necessarily connect the two things, although one should support the other. So with the digital transformation, I like to make it a bit more specific. I think digital transformation itself, it's quite a broad topic. So when we talk about AI and data, I think there needs to be a focus on really the AI and data capabilities. Whereas lean transformation is more of an organizational change and change of the behavior of the whole company. Okay. So should you have any other questions or comments, feel free to reach out afterwards. I hope that this was beneficial for you. I'm personally very excited about what is coming. I hope that you are too, and I hope that you and your organizations will be successful when it comes to the adoption of the technologies. So thank you. Have a good rest of the afternoon, and see you on one of the next webinars that we have lined up in the series.